Today's lesson is 3.2, Solving Absolute Value Functions. An absolute value equation will result in two distinct equations. One where my expression inside the absolute value sign is positive and the other is negative. So let's go ahead and start with a very simple problem to solve. The absolute value of x equals 9. To solve this equation, I'm going to take what's inside the absolute value sign, which would just be the x, and I'm going to set it equal to positive 9. And then I'm going to take what's inside the absolute value sign and set it equal to negative 9. Then I would go ahead and solve these two equations. Excuse me. There's nothing to solve here, so these would be my two answers, positive 9 and negative 9. Easy, right? Well, it's not always going to stay so easy. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit harder. Notice that inside my absolute value sign this time, I have x plus 4. So I'm going to do the same thing I just did. I'm going to take x plus 4 and I'm going to set it equal to positive 3, this number right here. And then I'm going to take x plus 4 and I'm going to set it equal to negative 3. I am going to have to go ahead and solve both of these equations. Now, the nice thing about both of these equations is to get rid of the 4, I will do the same thing. It's just when I actually do that operation is when I'm going to get my two different answers. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4 from both sides. And I would do that, if you take a look, I would do that also over here. Now I'm not going to get the same answer because one of them I'm taking 4 away from positive 3 and the other one I'm taking 4 away from negative 3. So they are going to give me two distinct answers. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. There's my first answer. And negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. There's my second answer. Always two answers with the absolute value. Because remember, the absolute value is the distance a number is away from 0. And so when we're 3 away from 0, we could be 3 on the negative side or the positive side of 0. We're still 3 in this case, or 9 in the case of the first one. All right, let's take a look at our next one. Now, take a look at this one. This one is a little bit more complicated because if you notice right out front, there is a number in front of my absolute value symbol. What I have to do in this case is I have to think of this absolute value as being my x. So let's just make it a big X. What I'm kind of thinking of, it's like 3x equals 15. That's what I have to think of it as. I have to get rid of the 3 before I can set up my two equations like we did in the last example. So to get rid of that 3, I'm going to get rid of the multiplication that's hiding between it and the absolute value. And so I'm simply going to divide by 3. I must do this first before I go ahead and set up my two equations. Otherwise, yes, I'm going to go ahead and get it wrong. So there we go. Now I can take this equation and split it into two. Say 3 minus 2x equals positive 5, and 3 minus 2x equals negative 5. Yes, I'm going to solve these two equations in the same manner, but because it's positive 5 and negative 5, I'm going to get two different answers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take away the 3. Actually, you know what? It should be a 13. I did it from the beginning. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and take away the 13. It should have been a 13. Sorry about that, guys. I'll fix that for class. Let's bring down the negative 2x. Notice I'm going to do the same thing over here, but when I subtract over here, I'm going to get negative 18. Here I get negative 8. So I have two different answers. I'm going to go ahead and divide by negative 2, both of them. Over here I get positive 4 for my first answer, And for my second one, I get positive 9. Now you don't have to do them simultaneously like I am. I'm just showing you that what I do to one, I'm also doing the same thing to the other. It's really just this number and this number that's going to be different. Okay, everything else is exactly the same, the adding, the subtracting, and so on. All right. I know you thought, okay, we got it. But no, here's another hard one. Notice we have that 3 in the front being multiplied again. We've seen that. But notice here, I have this -7. So what I have to think of this one is it's like 3x minus 7 equals 11. I have to get rid of that 7. And then I have to divide by the 3. Okay, I'm going to have to do that, but that x is really this right here. This whole absolute value is my x. So let's go ahead and add the 7 just like we saw in the last one, just like you saw with my laser. And yes, 11 plus 7 is, hold on, is 18. There we go. I'm going to get rid of that 3, just like I did before, by dividing by 3. So just remember that I'm going to try to trick you by making these a little bit harder by adding this number behind, this -7, adding or subtracting a number behind the absolute value. That's the purple 7 that you see. And then putting a number in front of it, the multiplication of that pink 3. That should be 6. There we go. Now I can go ahead and I can split them. So I have this equation, 4x plus 2 equals positive 6, and I have this equation, 4x plus 2 equals negative 6. I'm going to go ahead and solve both of these. Here we go. Remember, I'm doing the same operations. It's my answers that are going to be different. So if you want to, you can do them one at a time. It's a-okay. Maybe from here I'll stop and do this one. There we go. 1's my first answer. And then over here, I'm going to get -8. -6 minus 2. Divide that by +4. X equals -2. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about is this. You need to be careful when your equation is set equal to a negative. Remember, the absolute value cannot be negative. The absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of -3 is 3. An absolute value can never equal a negative number. Never, ever, ever. So you need to be careful. You really need to be careful and look for this situation. Now, in this one, I can't just go ahead and say there's no answer to this problem because we have this right here. So I do have to make sure that I move that 6 to the other side before I make a decision. But if it had said simply without the 6, if that was my answer, if that was my problem, my answer would be no solution because we cannot have this. This is a no, no. Okay? But because of the +6 there, I have to go ahead and I have to move that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract it to the other side and I'm going to see what -2 minus 6 equals. Well, -2 minus 6 equals -8. Uh-oh. Oh, let me get my red. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. My answer is no solution. This is my answer. Because I cannot have an absolute value equal to a negative number. So let's go ahead and write that down, and then we are done with this lesson. An absolute value of any quantity. That means it doesn't matter what's inside the absolute value. It doesn't matter that there's a 3x plus 5 in there. It could just be x, it could just be 3x, it could be just x plus 5. It doesn't matter. Any quantity, once you get it to this point right here, where you have an absolute value equal to a negative number, you cannot have that. I'm going to put it in pink because I don't want to be changing so many colors on you. Cannot equal a negative number. Ever, ever. So you just go ahead and you stop right here and you say no solution.